As seen in the previous video, my anticipation for the trident throw was wrong, and it has influenced the way I was throwing the trident. As the anticipation and the execution of an action generally have opposite forces. Since my anticipation was wrong, the throwing pose is also wrong. But there are still some good things about it. I'm still pushing a bit my character up in the sky because there is still momentum from the jump. And as the torso is swinging forward, there is also this kind of recoil from the throwing. You don't need to care about the trident position for the time being. Just focus on your character limbs, on the shape of his body. Also, you may want to cancel any rotation on the arm to make sure that you won't create any bugs. And as I explained before, do pose the shoulders, it's super important. If we have a look to the current pose I've created, we have a nice line of action, easy to read, a nice flow in the shoulders, and a continuity with the trident. I've also made sure that the trident is slightly twisted along its y-axis so that we do see the three peaks of the trident, and it does read well, not as a simple spear, but as a trident spear. So its position should be correct based on the throwing of our character, but the most important thing is that it feels correct based on our camera point of view. During the blocking stage, when I want to reach the maximum quality level, I do pose everything. The hands, the fingers, everything is posed in detail. As explained in chapter 8, some of the most important poses to be blocked are contact poses. Next pose I'm going to block is the one after the character lands. I don't want my character to take multiple steps before he gets into this pose. Using the preview dummy to spot the location of the landing, I have simply posed the right foot of my character, the first foot that was going to land, so that it gets an accurate position based on my planning. Once I get my right foot correctly positioned in space, I can start building my pose. I was initially blocking the contact pose, the actual first frame where the foot is contacting the ground. That's why you see me trying to shape the legs of the character. But then I felt that it would be easier to first build the next pose, the current pose we are talking about, and deal with the contact pose later on, so that I can use this contact pose to transition from the airborne position to the current crouch position. Since I've previously defined an approximate position for the feet, I can work and focus on the current pose without trying to figure out the mechanism to get there, the way the character transitions from its airborne pose to this current pose. So basically, you have to try to find the spot where your character will be before you pose him, so that you won't have to fix all the next poses after the landing. From there, it's all about creating a great pose. Since the character is first touching the ground with his right foot, I'm offsetting his weight onto the left foot. Then I'm voluntarily building a twinning pose show the mastery and control of our character. As explained before, we generally try to avoid twinning, unless you want to communicate or exaggerate balance and control, which is the case here. Once you have this in mind, the landing position and what you want to communicate, just apply the rules of good posing we have seen before. Good readability of the silhouette, balance, and in this specific case, I wanted the sword to be perfectly symmetrical to the camera. So again, most of the time we want to avoid twinning, but here it was made on purpose. From there, I got back onto the contact pose. As for the bouncing ball, the contact pose is the moment the character is going the fastest downward. Hence, this is the moment we'll reach the maximum stretching. Everything in the pose I'm currently building is communicating this. Both arms are dragging, right leg is stretching a lot, and I'm hitting the ground with the tip of the toes. The whole body is stretching, and I've distributed the stretching along the spine using the hips controller and the chest controller. The last little detail you should take care of whenever you are doing such a pose is your character staring at the landing point. It will look more realistic and it will also give the viewer the information the character is about to land there. Finally, as repeated before, I take the time to properly pose the hands, the fingers. The more details you put during the blocking stage, the easier will be the polishing and splining stages.